Epilepsy Warning. This game has an insane amount of flashing white lights, literally every time you pull the trigger. If you are sensitive to flashing lights, this game might actually kill you. No joke. Especially the PlayStation version. This game was not made with LCD screens in mind. You have been warned. Behind the ancient and mysterious door of fate lies treasures unseen by mere mortals in millennia. And all that stands between it and you are hordes of demonic beasts. Do you have the courage to claim this fortune for yourself?
Crypt Killer.
Originally released in arcades in 1995 by Konami, with home ports for the Saturn and PS1 dropping just 2 years later, Crypt Killer is a 3-player co-op, or 2-player co-op on consoles, light gun rail shooter. And while the console versions do let you play using a controller, come on.
It's Nerf or nothing.
You gotta get the plastic. And since I know people are gonna ask, I am rocking the Sinden light gun, which is extra on point as it too has pump action reloading just like its arcade counterpart. Perfect for slaying monsters and demons of all shapes and sizes. Though, if you're playing on consoles, you're gonna have to go with a more official brand, with seemingly a few options for the Saturn version, though I can't seem to find any information on which guns the Saturn version actually uses. But with the PS version, you're stuck with either the Naki Lunar Gun or the Konami Justifier. Plus, you're also gonna need a CTR TV.
Or hell, maybe I could just drop this on them.
Alright, now that we're ready to turn these monsters into Swiss cheese, or pancakes I guess, right at the start, Crypt Killer presents us with its first major trick, an attempt at escaping the linear nature of the railgun shooter. But what it's actually offering is the illusion of choice. And by that, I mean the level select, which determines the route of the game, or so you think. At the end of every stage lies a crystal eye, and you need to get 2 of them in order to open up the door, which is just a roundabout way of saying you gotta beat 2 stages. But whichever eye combo you get determines the ending you unlock. Okay, sounds straightforward enough, and it is a great concept for an arcade game, giving you different combinations to try out every single time you come back. Plus, with so many combinations, there must be a handful of great endings to unlock. Just think of the replayability here.
4 4 endings. One ending. 2.
That was close. We almost got educated.
Yeah, there are technically only 2 different colored eyes here, and each ending corresponds to the order in which you got them, with the possibilities being a good ending, a bad ending, a neutral ending, I guess. It doesn't really seem to fit to me, but whatever, and a tongue-in-cheek ending. And ironically, isn't as simple as just figuring out which stage has which eye color either, as apparently the eye color actually depends on which path you took in the stage, and each stage has 3 crossroads to choose from. And here is where the illusion of choice comes in, since figuring out which path leads to which eye is basically just guesswork, unless you look up a guide or something. Though seriously, who the hell is gonna play this game over and over and over again just to map out each exact path? Put your hand down. But the trick here is that each of these stage selects are more so starting points, letting you pick area 1. All of the paths end up intertwining, so while you may start at the Egyptian stage or a water stage, you still might end up at a crypt immediately after. This is more so an issue with the console versions, as the game over will reset your progress, making it much more likely that you'll hit the same areas. At least popping in more quarters in the arcade will keep you alive, so the areas you've already beaten will be blocked off. But long story short, there aren't really branching paths for each area, it's all just one big intersecting stage. But if you want to see the actual credits, counting that as a win, not just any of the endings, you're gonna have to beat all 6 starting areas, which also means you'll probably end up seeing at least 3 endings if you're lucky. So you'll have to play the game again, just hoping that you get the 4th.
It gets better and better every time I see it.
Even if you slotted in some of the greatest endings of all time here, it doesn't mean jack if people aren't willing to replay the game again and again and again to see them. And when you pull back the curtain, Crypt Killer really doesn't have much else going for it. It is a very simple, straightforward light gun shooter. Monsters pop up, and you introduce them to the business end of old Betsy to put them back down again. And regardless of which path you take, there's no deviation to this formula. And yeah, you'll find shotguns, grenade launchers, and automatic weapons, but they don't really last all that long or even change that much. Plus, you lose them with only a single hit. Lame. With the only major difference being that in the console versions, you get a few screen clearing grenades, which is an absolute must since you have a very finite number of lives, and you share continues on co-op. Boo. Pro tip, the console versions actually have an option for turning off reloading, so if you're not rocking a light gun, use that. Seriously, use that. You're gonna need every advantage you can get. Though, in all fairness, this game really isn't all that difficult either. Of course, it has its handful of cheap shots like many arcade titles do, but it isn't exactly trying to milk you for quarters either. And the console versions have a toned down number of enemies to help keep things more manageable. And while the gunplay is, it's fine, I think the major problem with the game, and what it's really missing that a lot of its contemporaries have, is that oomph.
It's the freak show,
Because visually, the game ranges from, nothing special to an absolute eyesore. And no, I am not dumping on early polygonal era jank. That just comes with the territory. It's not a real problem. But add in Bargain Bin Zordon here, leading the way. And just how goofy your protag acts with the way he stumbles around, which can be a bit nauseating. And the complete lack of atmosphere in the stages. These horror-themed areas sure are bright. Plus the completely unnecessary, but not unappreciated, busty girl at the start, making it pretty clear that despite its advertising, or the cover, Crypt Killer leans way more into the campy side of horror than the actual scary side, which makes sense, considering the Japanese version of this game is actually called Henry Explorers.
Henry Explorers.
Definitely explains a lot of the mythological enemies here, but obviously this redirect does the game little favors, setting the expectations for horror like that of Carnival or House of the Dead, while delivering fitting but mostly generic horror foes. Again, it lacks the oomph of the era, with no real goofy animations, enemies, bloodbaths, or even so bad it's good storytelling and dialogue like other games of the genre. But what it does still have is what you've all probably already gotten sick of. The constant flashing, which happens every time you take a shot in a game where you do nothing but shoot. Now, for your sake, I have intentionally been sticking to the arcade footage because it's actually toned down in this department. But if you use the controller to play on the console, well, here's a taste. Feel free to skip to this moment in the video if you value your eyesight. Okay, so that was a little rough on the eyes there. We're gonna go ahead and make sure you're okay with a standard eye exam. Let me know when you can read this top word. Fortunately for you, I won't be adding an ear exam to the tab, as the music, just like most of the graphics, is pretty bland. Mostly going for a more foreign vibe, trying to emulate the regions these areas might be found in. Pity though, it doesn't really get the blood pumping for a shootout. With the exception of one or two standouts. It's when these tunes are rocking during boss fights or enemy swarms, mostly during the arcade version, that are the absolute highlights of the game, but are far and few between, and not really enough to make it worth hunting down a CRT, light gun or guns, a copy of the game, and anything else you might need to play it, especially if flashing lights are problematic for you. Crypt Killer is pretty much the definition of basic when it comes to light gun games, and you can certainly do better. Though, if you see it in an arcade and have two buddies by your side, it might just be worth tossing a few bones in to go after one of those endings.